Let me tell y'all about the time a warlock with a harem nearly starved a whole community on the Kentucky-Virginia border. Now, I'm talking about old Black Eyes, Jim Baker. And this happened in the 1840s. There was a small settlement called Flat Gap near Black Mountain on the Kentucky-Virginia border. And Jim Baker was an outsider to the community. Now, they said that he was a very tall and ruggedly handsome man. He had jet black eyes and jet black hair, and he was also very articulate. But he didn't mix up with the men folk of the community much. He didn't hardly talk to them. But all of the ladies were naturally drawn to him. As a matter of fact, they described him as dreamy. Of course, this ruffled some feathers and did not go over well. And they ostracized Jim Baker and taunted him. So he packed up and moved away from the settlement. He moved up to Black Mountain, about 5 or 6 miles away up the mountain, and he found a flat spot near the top. And old timers to this day still call it Baker's Flat or Baker's Rock. Well, the thing is, Jim Baker still came to town every couple of weeks to get supplies. And he always brought a pack mule with him. And he loaded that pack mule down with enough supplies for several people. Way more than one person needs to survive. And not only that, word began to spread around town that, he didn't work anywhere. The only work in the area was sawmills, and they talked among themselves, and he didn't work at any of the sawmills. So they began to speculate that he was up there making moonshine because he always seemed to have money for supplies. And not only that, rumors got around that he was living with a lady up there. And then more rumors got around that he was living with more than one lady up there. So as these things go, a couple of the hunters got the bright idea to, under the pretense of a hunting trip, they took their dogs with them and everything, and they set out to spy on Jim Baker to see what was really going on at the top of the mountain there. They led their dogs, they didn't let them actually hunt because they were trying to keep the element of surprise. And they hadn't even reached the cave yet. In fact, they come to a clearing when this woman in a black dress comes running through the clearing, just shouting at the top of her lungs incoherently. And Jim Baker is right behind her, saying, "You think since there are so few of you that you could get along better than this." Well, their voices quiet down. Evidently, he talked her into going back with him, and they turned back to go towards the cave. Well, the hunters quietly pursue them, and they get the cave in sight, but these two massive dogs come running out, just basically attacking them, barking and just raising Cain. So they both grab a couple of sticks to fend the dogs off with. And while all this is going on, three women come chasing out after the dogs, and Jim Baker comes stepping from behind the cave. And he's got a musket, and it's trained right on them. And not only that, four more women come stepping out of the cave. One of them's brushing her hair. Another one's holding a fire poker. And what really gets the gentleman's attention is that there's a whole cannon up there. I'm talking about like a Civil War era cannon. It's up there with them. That really gets their attention. Well, one of the men gets brave enough and says, "Hello there." Well, Jim Baker doesn't say a word. He just takes a step forward, and he still has that musket trained on him. So the hunters tuck tail and run. They run all the way back to town, and of course all the townsfolk are waiting to hear about what they saw up there. So they talk about, the man living up there with a cannon and seven women, and it causes such a fuss that the church has to have a special service to talk about how vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, to settle down the talk of forming a posse, of forming vigilantes. And anyway, that seems to work. But in the next few days that follow, the whole town is shaken by cannon fire. 3 consecutive shots by that cannon were heard all throughout that valley. Now, the settlers, took a tally. Nobody was hurt. Nobody was injured. So they didn't know what was going on, why he was up there firing that cannon. But what's even stranger is that after that, all the hunters in the settlement started to not be able to take any game. And it's not because they didn't see it. And we're talking about these men made their livelihoods by hunting, and they fed their families by hunting. So they were skilled hunters. But all of a sudden they started not being able to hit their targets and not being able to bring any meat home for the table. So the villagers all knew that this was witchcraft. Well, one of the elderly settlers said that in the buttstock of his rifle, when he had come over from England, he found this pamphlet that basically told them how to dispatch witches. He just happened to find this pamphlet, and it had some very explicit instructions on it. One is you had to carve the image of the witch on the smooth bark of a chestnut tree that faced the sun, and you had to take 13 steps back from that chestnut tree and wait till exactly sunrise and fire at that image. And then you had to say, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. And then the instructions were to take the musket that you had fired at the chestnut tree with back home, and you make a plug for the barrel with beeswax. You plug the barrel with beeswax, and then you put 30 drops of water in it. And you turn the musket upside down with the barrel pointed down towards the ground, and you put it in the corner of your chimney. And in 30 days, the witch will be gone. That will dispatch the witch. And it will be a painful, horrible thing for them if it actually goes the whole 30 days. He said it's important, though, in the meantime, to not let the witch or anyone he knows borrow anything, or it can break, the counterspell. Well, the hunter did exactly that. He took his musket and put the water and the beeswax in it, put it in his chimney, and sure enough, in about 10 days, one of the ladies come asking to borrow something from him. But he was smarter. He refused. So that's when he said, well, if the witch is smart enough to, basically almost starve all of us and to try to borrow something. So he told all his friends and family not to let any of them borrow anything also. And finally, on the 29th day, another one of the ladies came, and this time all the pretenses and all, it was all out the window. She said, he is on his deathbed. You've got to do something. He's surely going to die. So the hunter goes to his chimney and pulls the musket out, and guess what? There was only one drop of water left in there. One little drop of water was all that was left. So he pulls the beeswax out, and he gives it to the lady. He says, now take this and give it to Jim Baker and have him eat it, and he will be well. He said, but if you had waited one more day, then surely he would have been gone. Well, nobody really knows for sure what happened to Jim Baker after that, but he was gone. Never seen or heard from again. And they say you can still go to that chestnut tree and see where that image is carved. That's been Jay's Haunted Appalachia for tonight. Keep Appalachia haunted, y'all.